Hello and welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock, and despite a quiet Halloween weekend, we do have news to discuss with John Ramdeen and Robin Black. On the show today, we'll go over the UFC 192 pay-per-view number that has been reported for Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafsson. Ovince St. Preux is hoping for a busy schedule with his plans, and a new opponent for Tony Ferguson this December in Las Vegas. Last week, we noted the rib injury sustained by Khabib Nurmagomedov, taking him out of his lightweight fight with Tony Ferguson on December the 11th at the UFC Fight Night event in Las Vegas. The UFC has now made it official that Edson Barboza will step in and fight Ferguson in just over 5 weeks. The TUF Season 13 winner, Ferguson, has won 6 straight fights and is 9-1 since entering the UFC back in 2011. Barboza bounced back from a loss to Michael Johnson by earning a decision over Paul Felder in his last fight. Last week on UFC Tonight, it was reported that Ovince St. Preux is not only ready to fight, but has his eyes set on a number of big names and is happy to fight at light heavyweight or go up to the heavyweight division for fights. St. Preux noted through his coach Joey Zonar that he tried to replace Stipe Miocic on the Dublin, Ireland card, and is also throwing out the idea of a fight with Rashad Evans this December at the Fox card in Orlando, or a fight with Jimmy Manuwa next February in London, and even throwing out the possibility of a middleweight contest with Michael Bisping, stating he would like to fight any of them. And Dave Meltzer from MMAfighting.com reports that the range for the UFC 192 pay-per-view number is trending around the 250,000 buy mark. This was the October 3rd event headlined by Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafsson for the light heavyweight title, which would put it on pace to be the 3rd lowest selling UFC pay-per-view of the year and one of the lowest purchased light heavyweight title fights since the UFC expanded in 2005. This card also featured Ryan Bader taking on Rashad Evans and had the last-minute loss of the welterweight fight between Tyron Woodley and Johnny Hendricks. We are back this Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for a 1-hour pre-fight show. Robin Black, John Ramdeen, and myself will get you set for all of the fights coming your way from Sao Paulo, Brazil. You can keep it tuned here immediately afterwards, as we will have the undercard from Sao Paulo, Brazil airing here in Canada on Fight Network with 4 fights coming your way prior to the main card. Here with John Ramdeen and Robin Black coming out of the weekend, and we look ahead. Next weekend's going to be a very busy one with both Bellator and UFC presenting cards. But before we talk about those shows, I want to go back. Dave Meltzer, who is the man when it comes to getting pay-per-view information, it looks like, not an exact figure, but the ballpark for Daniel Cormier and Alexander Gustafsson is right around 250,000 buys, which would be the lowest purchased light heavyweight title fight of the modern era since they exploded about a decade ago. Does that number surprise you? Do you think this is some kind of indication that, is this an indictment on the title situation? Is it more just these two? It wasn't a fight that enough people were interested in? What conclusions do you draw from this number?
I really have no clue. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me because you're looking at 2 of the top guys at 205 pounds. And with the whole, I would have figured more people were tuning in because of the whole John Jones situation, but clearly not. It's baffling.
Hey man, you put John Jones in that next fight, and
Yeah,
we're going to clue in. I'm a Daniel Cormier fan.
Isn't everybody?
Yeah, isn't everybody? I mean, it's a brilliant fighter.
But not everyone has $60 every month for every fight. And to the John Jones, we talked about the fact that was cleared. It makes this fight somewhat interesting. Of the winner is likely going to fight John Jones. But a lot of people who have their cash allocated, they're like, I'm going to buy the John Jones fight when that happens and not this.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's like, I'm a fan of Daniel Cormier. You're a fan of Daniel Cormier. But for a lot of people, exactly whether it's motivated by money or time or distraction of all the other things in the world, they're like, wake me when John Jones shows up.
What doesn't make sense, though, is people see Daniel Cormier on television. Like, if you're in the U.S., for example, he's on the Fox desk. So you'd figure that would generate more interest to have people say, well, at least, there's a tie there. I'm seeing him on a regular basis behind the desks. He's funny. He's got a great personality. But clearly
they wanted to see him against John Jones earlier this year. I mean, in certain situations.
But it's John Jones.
But Alexander Gustafsson was clearly not the fight that people wanted. And the other option being Ryan Bader, I don't think that does any better.
Not at all.
No. I think, realistically, there's just so much of everything in the world. There's so many fights. We know everybody's like, well, we got to watch Ronda Rousey because Ellen told me that she's the best in the world. So we got to see that. And then this Conor McGregor guy, man, he's crazy. We got to see that. His fight Jose. Like, there's a lot of got to sees. So, yeah, I think you got to maybe skip some. I mean, it's very hard for us to imagine other people and how they think because we're marks. we'll
Fair
watch
enough.
them all. But not everybody is as committed to fighting as we are. I think they should be, but we don't have that control.
However, does it come down to the card itself? Yes, you have a main event like Dan Cormier and Gustafsson. I think casual fans and hardcore fans can appreciate this fight because they saw Gustafsson take John Jones to the limit, so to speak. Is it the supporting cast? You look at this, it's very confusing for people because they're trying to understand where to allocate their $60. But then you're giving them Dan Henderson and Vitor Belfort for free instead of having, I think, if you're going to have a fight night main event, Teixeira and Cummins is a pretty good fight night main event.
I think it's gonna determine how big the fight is. I mean, we go back. Certainly, there's cases where you stack a card with 3 big fights. That's gonna help. Jones and Cormier, Rousey and Katzengano, 0 support on those cards, and those did fantastic because the main event was such an attraction that it didn't matter what you put on. But in the case of Daniel Cormier at this point, who's fighting anyone but John Jones, I think you do need that support, and they lost some of that in Johnny Hendricks the day before.
Yeah. That's true, but I think maybe the point that we're getting steered to is that he is not in a category for whatever reason. Although we disagree, Daniel Cormier to the average person is not in a category with John Jones and Ronda Rousey. I guess that's what we've learned from this.
Few are.
Few are.
I mean, it's really a group of 3 with the addition of Conor McGregor that are those level of stars that are going to draw that level of business.
Yeah, that can change. If John Jones comes back to the sport and Daniel Cormier rejigs some things and finds a way to defeat John Jones, I think he will start to become that star because everybody's calling John Jones the greatest fighter in the history of fighting. If Cormier can come out and on this huge platform do that, defend his title, I think that...
That's an interesting thing, So Cormier loses to Jones, but then ends up being the champ, and people are like, nah. Hendricks lost to GSP. I know many disagree, but he did. At least that was the result. And he went on to be champ, and nobody was all that jazzed about him. I think you do have to beat the man, or the woman. I think you have to beat them ultimately. And maybe we're overthinking it too, because as much as the resource of money, that $60 is an element, people's resources of time. I mean, every single weekend there's 20 amazing things you'd like to do, but you only have one life and one place to allocate it.
That's a fight that had you put on Fox probably would have done tremendous numbers, and it would have been a completely different discussion afterwards of how many eyeballs were on these two. But pay-per-view, you suddenly put a paywall behind them. It becomes a bigger decision for people who don't want to spend necessarily $60 on every single
I'd do it.
Cormier
UFC
is
card.
awesome.
John Ramdeen, he's in heavy debt because he watches everything. But we have more Fight News Now Extra, which is free.